everyone, Squee here, and welcome to another Thoughts Behind the Wheel. These are so easy to do. They're so nice. I talk while I'm driving, which I do anyway. Wait, no. I don't normally just talk while I'm driving. Just, you know. Okay, I totally do. And then throw a picture on it, render it real quick, and throw it up on YouTube. So, hey, easy peasy. You'll probably be getting this the same day as another one. Mainly because, and you might not, I don't know. But I was going to upload yesterday? Okay, that's just getting really confusing. I was going to upload the one recorded on Monday the 17th, However, my power supply blew. At least I hope it was just my power supply. So there I am on my computer playing my games and stuff. And my circuit breaker tripped in my room. Good times. And then the computer obviously shut off because the circuit breaker tripped. And I turn on the circuit breaker, I go to my computer, I smell burning, and nothing starts. So I say it's a 60-40 shot. 60% chance my power supply blew and that was it, because power supplies are actually built in with safety features to try and keep the rest of your computer from going down. However, 40% chance that system didn't work at all because they're not the best and my entire computer's fried. Let's hope it's the first one. I got a new power supply. I'm going to go home. I'm going to install it. Hopefully everything will be fine. If not, then I'm borked because I won't have the money to replace a computer, for like a month at least. I mean, you know, if it fried my system, we're talking $1,500 to replace that. That's going to take a bit of time. And I have no idea what I'm going to do in the meantime. So let's be positive here. And by the time you watch this, I'll probably put an annotation on the video or something. I will know, so hopefully you will know too, and all of this will hopefully not matter. Yeah, so where was I? So, not having access to a computer, I don't have access to your questions. So, not to mention also, I didn't post the Thoughts Behind the Wheel, so I didn't get any new questions. There were a few questions I hadn't answered yet. I'll see if I can remember those. I think I do. Let's see. One was... let me see if I can remember exactly how this question was phrased. I think I once said that I didn't do Minecraft as a Let's Play because the game didn't have an end. There was no end point, so there was no way to know when to stop the Let's Play. That actually wasn't why I didn't Let's Play it, but that was the question asked. And they said, but, you know, pen and paper games also don't have an end. So how do I feel about that? Has my opinion changed on that kind of thing? And the truth of the matter is, no, my opinion hasn't changed. Perhaps I should clarify more what I meant. I don't mind playing games at all that don't have an end. I'm fine with that. Skyrim doesn't have an end. Fallout doesn't have an end. I mean, they have ends to stories, sure, but, you know, they go on forever. Pen and paper games like Rifts don't end, and I love that fact. The reason why I don't play Minecraft... Now, when I did my little Minecraft Let's Play, I made a joke that this game doesn't have an end, so I have to create one for myself so that I know when to end the Let's Play. That was all there just to set up the joke of, oh, look, I made a perfect wooden cube. Let's Play's over. The reason why I don't really do Minecraft as a Let's Play is because the game doesn't hold much interest for me at the moment. And I hear that's changing, but at the moment, here's the problem with Minecraft. There's almost no, if any, story whatsoever. You build things, and then you look at what you built. And you show it off to friends. And that's cool, and that gets a lot of people addicted, and I can see why it gets them addicted. It's kind of fun to build stuff and be creative, and I love that. In fact, I love what Minecraft is doing to our gaming community because it's a different type of game, and a new generation of gamers are growing up on it. And, you know, my generation of gamers, we're very much, we need rewards right now. We're very much instant gratification. I played Mario, I jumped over that thing, and I hit this box, and give me the mushroom now! I want my mushroom! That's kind of the gaming that we're used to. Minecraft's a much slower burn. Minecraft is a slower payoff. Minecraft's you build something through hard work and sweat, and then the payoff comes much later, maybe when you can show this work off and it's appreciated. Which I think will be good for games, because it'll allow game developers to be able to make different types of games that don't have to have instant gratification attached to them. Anyway, I'm not a big fan of Minecraft, only because there's not much to hold me there. It would be fun for me for a few hours to build stuff and build castles and whatnot. But there's nothing to use the castle on. There's no story. There's no reason to build the castle. There's no invading horde that I have to defend against. And I know people say, but there's creepers and stuff. Yeah, but I mean, it's not really... creepers are easy. You build a door and you're fine. You see what I mean? There's no real threat that would take ingenuity and creativity to circumvent. Now, before everyone jumps in the comments and says, but Squee, there's this. Look, I am simply pointing out what I know of Minecraft. I'm not suggesting that that doesn't exist. I am simply saying I've never seen it, and I've never seen it enough to get me interested in Minecraft. As I said, I've heard things are changing. Who knows? Maybe in time there will be things like that keep me invested and give me reasons to do this kind of thing. But at the moment, that's why. I don't see a whole lot of payoff. So it wasn't that the game didn't have an end. It was that I didn't see a point to building everything. At least not a point that would keep me interested enough to play it. But pen and paper games that have no end, see, here's the difference. They're the complete opposite, you might say. They don't have an end, but it's their story that never ends, and stories are what drive me to a game more than anything else. So the idea of a story that doesn't have an end, it just keeps going forever, is amazing. So I love those. So that's that question. Excuse me while I drink my boba tea. I needed a boba tea. I'm having a bad day. My computer might be dead, so this makes me happy. I know you're like, but peach tea? Yeah, but peach tea I have all the time. Yeah, I have like a refrigerator full of it. Boba tea I actually have to go 30 minutes away to find, because there's no boba tea around me. So when I was in the area anyway, so I got myself boba tea. Anyway, so yeah, I don't have any other questions to really answer that I can think of. There's probably a few, and I can't think of them at the moment. Someone did say they wanted to know more about Alcibiades, the character in history that Al, my Rift's character, was named after. Al's real name is Castle, which is my middle name, actually. Which is the coolest middle name in the world, if you ask me. Love being named Castle, but no one ever uses it. Except for one guy, an old roommate of mine named Paul, who heard me once say that I was sad because no one ever used my middle name, and then he started calling me Castle. Because all my friends called me by my last name, because there's way too many Stevens in the world, and that's my real name, Steven. And we had like 3 Stevens in our group, so they all called me by my last name. And I lamented that my middle name was so much more cooler than my last name. So my roommate started calling me Castle, which was really cool, and I appreciated that. But anyway, so Al's real name is Castle, but of course he doesn't go by Castle. He kind of left that behind with his old life. He goes by the name Al, or Alcibiades. Or Alcibiades, or Al for short. Alcibiades was a character in history, in Greek history, that was a man that could put on any face. He grew up in Athens, and Athens at the time was known for its luxuries and its thinkers. Athens is where you get the great philosophers of the day, and they were used to riches and luxury and the fine things in life, and spouting philosophy and being thinkers. And he grew up in Athens, and then Athens went to war with Sparta in the Peloponnesian War, and Alcibiades, I forget why, because I looked this up on Wiki, but I mean, because I knew once, but I'm not an encyclopedia. I don't have all the details with me. Alcibiades switched sides. I forget why. I think he screwed something up. I think he screwed up a battle for Athens and ran. And was like, I'm not going home to face that. And he defected to Sparta. And he was seen as the pinnacle of Athenians. He was the most Athens of Athens. He excelled in luxury and loved the fineries of life and spouting philosophy, and he was the pinnacle of what an Athenian was thought to be. Then he defected to Sparta. And Sparta was literally the opposite end of the spectrum. They were about simplicity and harsh living and just the necessities and being a warrior and having the most physically fit body possible and living and breathing war and aggression and physicality and we don't need those luxuries. Get that silk out of here. We just need a stool and some bread and a bed, and that's it. We're good. And our shield. And he defected to Sparta and became more Spartan than the Spartans. He was famous for being the pinnacle of Spartanness, I guess you might say. He threw away all his luxuries and embraced the warrior tradition. He did work his body and learn war and behave just like a Spartan, even more so than many Spartans did. And he quickly gained the admiration of the other Spartans. Well, at some point in the Peloponnesian War, he was in charge of a battle for the Spartans, I believe, and he screwed that up too. So he redefected back to Athens. And this guy was so good at speaking his way out of problems, of using his tongue and his wits to get out of problems, that Athens actually took him back. I forget how he did it. I don't know if we know how he did it, but he convinced them to take him back. Maybe he's like, I was a double agent and I was really with you guys the whole time. And Athens was like, okay, we get it, we come back. And he went right back to being the most Athens of Athens. The pinnacle of Athenians. And this guy, he could wear lifestyles like a mask. It was insane. Eventually, he was once again put in charge of a naval battle, screwed it up royally, and ran away. And we really don't know what happened to him. He was lost to antiquity. But just this guy was one of the most interesting figures in history. And I thought he represented Al brilliantly, because Al was trained and has worn many different faces during the campaign. He's getting away from that. Al's character arc is taking him away from that a bit. He hasn't lost any of the skill, and he's still more than willing to do it when it necessitates it, when it's necessary. But he's less quick to do it. I guess you could say Al, when the campaign started, was a bit harsher, a bit colder, a bit. If you are a threat, he will take you out. You know, if you're not a threat, he'll do what he can to avoid fighting you. But if you even pose somewhat of a threat, it's better to take you out and survive another day. That's what Al started off as. Now, as the campaign progresses, he's been through a lot, and he's really rethinking this choice, this lifestyle choice. And this has actually come up heavily in our past session, where I don't want to spoil too much, but where a lot of coalition soldiers were hurt in a crash, and some of the group were like, dude, they're coalition soldiers, leave them. They were trying to kill us a week ago. These specific ones weren't, but the coalition in general was trying to kill us a week ago, and what the hell are you doing? And Al was refusing and helping them and treating them. And a lot of it, interesting note, is that a lot of people like to say Al's preachy. He's not as preachy as most people think. Because to be preachy, you're supposed to try and change people to your point of view. Al basically just defends his own point of view a lot, but he's kind of forced to a lot. The only time he ever tries to implant his morals on others, I suppose, is when he thinks that they might be doing something that could cause problems for his friends. Like if you think about Bear. Yes, Al did get a little preachy on Bear, but only because he was worried Bear was going to try and do something to Mila or someone else. And he was worried that Bear might actually become a problem and hurt someone. In that case, he did try to talk him down and maybe get a bit preachy. But you'll notice if that's not the case, Al never tries to convince anyone to see things his way so much as make a choice and defend it. So he's not as preachy as people like to think he is. He does have high morals, and they're getting a little bit loftier, even more so. And a lot of it has to do with the conversation with Aaron Tarn. I don't know if you saw that episode or not, but if not, you probably should. Aaron Tarn is a very, very popular character in the Rifts universe. She's a very wise and loving and compassionate figure in the Rifts world. And Al knew of her from the Coalition. She is like the most wanted person in the Coalition. They want her badly because she spreads knowledge and sedition and all that stuff. And one of Al's big things lately is he wants to experience all the things the Coalition kept telling him his entire life were bad to see for himself. That's partly why he wanted to become an elf, or didn't mind becoming an elf, because he was told his whole life that DBs are horrible. And now that he's kind of opened his eyes to this new world, he wants to find out for himself. He wants to experience the racism and hatred towards DPs firsthand, so that he can judge it for himself. Same thing with Aaron Tarn. He really liked the chance to get to meet her because he's been told his whole life, not his whole life, but he'd been told that by the Coalition she was evil and horrible and bad, and yet here she is, and she doesn't seem any of those things. And Al, he's a very conflicted character because he grew up with the Coalition, and he knows that the Coalition isn't all bad. I mean, they're not horrible people. They are like any other government. They've got good people and bad people. Are most of them bigoted? Yes. Are most of them racist? Yes. Did most of them have a choice in that? Absolutely not. If you think of it this way, let's take a real world example. After September 11th, it showed, the newscast would show like children in Afghanistan watching the footage, and the children would jump up and down and cry for joy and dance because the evil Americans got what was coming to them. And I remember watching a TV and watching this, and it was in a public place. I don't remember, I think it was like a Best Buy, honestly. And I remember someone standing next to me that I didn't know, some stranger, saying, we should like go and murder all those little ingrates because how dare they say that, and how evil are those kids. And I'm sitting there thinking, man, they're just kids. They don't know any better. They've been told since the day they were born that America is evil. Of course they're going to think America's evil and be happy that evil got a bloody nose. You can't blame children for that. And when those children grow up into adults, you still really can't blame them. All they've ever known, all they've ever been told, all they've ever experienced is that America is evil. 90% of them have never seen an American, have never had a chance to judge for themselves. And by the time that many of them do get a chance to judge for themselves, they have been so brainwashed by what they've been told that it would take an enormous amount of work and effort to change their points of view. And I view the Coalition, Al would view the Coalition the same way. These people who grew up in the Coalition have spent their entire lives being told how horrible and evil magic and DBs are. Since childhood. Now, can you really, really blame them for holding that view? I don't think you can. Because they never had a chance to think differently. They were never shown another way, a better way. So how can you blame them for holding the beliefs they hold? So, that's, anyway. So Al wants more than anything to change this. He doesn't think he can change the whole Coalition, but maybe a few. Maybe he can show some people what he's seen. Because he grew up just like them. He grew up believing the same things they did, and through his harsh experience, he had his eyes open, and maybe he can do the same for others. Maybe he can help others in the Coalition see the way he does. And he once asked Aaron Tarn when they met, how can he do this? How can he combat such ingrained and deep beliefs And she was very simple response, a very simple answer, which I think was brilliantly done by Inferno. Not only holding true to the character, but a really good response that I think Aaron Tarn would have had, which was, show them a better way. Keep doing good. And eventually, sooner or later, it will make a difference. You just keep showing them that there is another way, and that way is the better way. And I think he really, really, really took that to heart. So this past session was a perfect example of that. They were coalition soldiers, yes. They, if they were ordered to, would have tried to murder him, absolutely. The second he took his helmet off and they saw he was an elf, they treated him poorly, absolutely. But you know what? He went there in their time of greatest need and saved their lives, the lives he could. Gave everything he had, dedicated every ounce of skill he had to save their life. And when he was done, he told them to take care and walked away and never asked for a thing. And the thought, the chance, the idea that maybe in just one of their minds this left an impression that maybe there's a better way is all he needed, and it was worth risking his life for. So that's kind of how Al feels. That's the direction I'm taking Al. It's funny because so many people in that world, in PCs and in PCs alike, tell him how naive he is and how childish he acts and how foolish he acts, and they're not necessarily wrong. They really aren't. He does behave. Okay, no. They are wrong, because I don't think Al is naive. I think he fully understands the way the world works, and I don't think a lot of the characters grasp that. I think the only difference is he sees the same world and sees what it could be instead of what it is, and works for what it could be and believes in what it could be instead of what it is. Most of the characters in that world, and you can't blame them, see the world for what it is right now and act upon what the world is right now. And the only difference between them and Al, it's not that Al's naive, it's not that Al doesn't see the same world and same threats they do, it's that Al thinks of what the world could be and works towards that goal. And, you know, of course, he's going to get a lot of flack for it. He's going to get a lot of people like Lee telling him how childish and foolish he is. And he has to take that. Like, you'll notice, if you watch, every time someone calls him childish or foolish, like Lee, or more recently Nora, he doesn't get angry about it. He doesn't let it anger him. At least not yet. Not as of yet. And because he views them the same way he views a lot of the coalition. That sounds horrible, but hear me out. Of course they think that way. They never had a chance to think any other way. I mean, look at Lee. Look at the life he's led. Look at what he's been through. Of course he sees the world as it is and sees it in a very cynical light and doesn't have much hope for it getting better and thinks that Al's optimism is foolishness. Well, of course he does. Who wouldn't? Who's been through Lee's experiences? Nora is the same way. Look at what that poor girl's been through. Look at what the coalition did to her village. And Al sitting here saying they're not all evil and they're worth saving. I mean, who in Nora's position is going to look at that and think that that makes sense? So Al doesn't get mad when someone calls him a childish or naive, because in his point of view, I hate to say, it's hard to describe, because it's not like, I was going to say it's not like they don't know any better. That sounds childish or demeaning, because it's not. Al just understands that's who they are, and they've never had a chance to think any other way, and so it's not their fault, and he doesn't blame them. So, you know, he takes it all in stride. And hopes that just one day, if he keeps doing what he's doing, maybe one day his actions will speak louder than his words ever could. Hopefully. Maybe not. Who knows? That's the brilliant thing about this character that I love so much, is that this isn't necessarily something that will have a payoff. You know, a lot of pen and paper players want a payoff. They want Because this is wish fulfillment, after all. Inferno says this a lot. Pen and paper games is wish fulfillment. It's cool stuff happening because you want it to happen. And, you know, and if you work really hard towards all these goals and it never happens, most of the time you feel cheated, like you wasted your time. I am that way to a point. Yeah, if I work really hard at something, I certainly want it to succeed, yes. But I don't need it to succeed. I think one day, if Al sees that this effort, this mindset, this philosophy that he's been acting upon recently has a positive effect, it'll be fantastic for him as a character and me as a player. It'll be incredibly rewarding. However, if that never happens, if we go through the rest of this campaign and Al is constantly seen as childish, naive, foolish, and stupid, and it never comes to pay off, I don't think it'll matter much, because I think both me as a player and Al as a person understand that his efforts could be futile. It may be that these thoughts and philosophies are so ingrained and so entrenched that one little elf is not going to fix it. And he fully accepts that and understands it, and I do as a player too. And I think we both agree that even if that's the case, even if that comes to pass, it was still worth trying. So, you know, we'll see. We'll see what happens. It'll be interesting. Yeah, but I kind of went off on a tangent there. That was not my intent, but hey, it happened. It's not like I had a lot of questions to respond to right now anyway. One question I have been getting a lot, and I will address now, is am I going to do anything more with those third wheel chumps? Those third wheel, those crazy guys, those guys with the third wheel, the thrilling intent guys. I very recently was on a stream with them as an Aloranian paladin. And if you're not familiar with their series, first of all, if you're not familiar with their series Thrilling Intent, oh my god, you need to check it out. If you like stories and pen and paper games specifically, but even if you're not very fond of pen and paper games, these guys are amazing. They are the reason why we did the first 20 or so episodes of Ardenfell, where Kriana did that amazing editing work where our characters would show up and talk to each other. It was a very visual experience. They're where we got the idea. They're the original. They started it, and they've got like 80 some odd episodes of that, and it just gets better and better and better with time. It is really amazing to watch. You should check it out. I'll try to remember to put a link in the description. If not, leave a comment that I forgot to put a link in the description, then I'll remember. But they're really, really cool guys, and I got to take I got to join them on one of their one-shot roleplay streams as an Alorani paladin, which is an interesting take on the paladins, because Aloranians, they're a whole society that believes in business and money, and so an Alorani paladin is someone who defends the righteous and defeats the wicked. But with a slight twist, because he's Aloranian, the righteous equals the rich, because that's their values. You know, you want to get money, and the more money you have, the better you must be, the more righteous. And he defeats the poor, which is the wicked, which is probably the closest to a villain I have ever played. In fact, there's so many people that always complain that all I ever play are good guys, and I tell everyone, because I can't stomach playing a bad guy. And I found a way to do both at the same time. So anyway, I managed to join a stream with them. It was a marvelous time. It was really, really fun. And people keep asking if I'm going to do anything more with those third wheel guys. And yes, I absolutely am. We are actually really good friends. We contacted them, oh God, months and months ago now. We said, hey, we love you guys. You guys are amazing. You're really, really cool. And we just want to let you know that. And want to know if you'd ever be interested in maybe an Ardenfell Thrilling Intent crossover thing. And being the really cool guys they are, they said, oh my God, that sounds amazing. And we got to talking and we all became really good friends. Now, the Ardenfell Thrilling Intent crossover thing fell through. It was really complex. It was complicated. It didn't work, but something else grew out of it, which is not only a friendship, where our group is now really good friends with their group, and in fact, Friana and Bernerator play Final Fantasy online with them all the time, and we all just shoot the breeze like Stabby and I. Stabby's the GM in Thrilling Intent. We've just been on the phone for like, on Skype for hours, just talking about GM stuff and thoughts and ideas that I want to do for, say, Ardenfell or Corsairs, and thoughts that he wants to do for Thrilling Intent, and just having a great time. Jackson was really, really kind. Jackson's the artist from Thrilling Intent. He's also Gregor. He drew an amazing picture that I was able to use in Ardenfell for me, which I was really grateful for. Just a lot of stuff. We're really good friends. So yes, you can expect, not only can you expect more togetherness from us, two of them, Faust, who plays Ash in Thrilling Intent, and Stabby, who is the GM for Thrilling Intent, are going to be in our upcoming Corsairs campaign. So that's going to be really cool. So the Corsairs campaign, a lot of people have been asking about it. We've been really tight-lipped because we didn't want to give too much information before we were ready. And it's still a ways off. You guys are going to have to wait a bit, but we're finally ready to do our first session. And if my computer is working, if it's working, we're probably going to record our first session next Tuesday. So like a week from today as I record this. Now, that doesn't mean it'll be up on YouTube that same week. We have to do a massive amount of editing, so it'll probably still be quite some time before you start seeing it. But hey, we're ready to start. We're ready. We got everything we need. We've got all the assets. Kriana's been drawing her butt off, making so many assets for this. I've got all my maps ready. I've got the story ready. They've got their characters ready. We are good to go. So I can feel confident in telling you guys a little bit more about the Corsairs and what to expect. To first answer the question, yes, Faust and Stabby are going to be regular PCs in that campaign. Not just cameos, not just guests, but actual full-blown characters, and it's going to be amazing. So you're going to have Inferno, Piff, Kriana, Bernerator, Faust, the Stabby. 6 players and a GM. It's a lot, but this is a very experienced role-playing group, and I think it'll be amazing. So that'll be fun. So the Corsairs, what are the Corsairs? Well, first and foremost, I should let you know, it is based in the Rifts Megaverse. I love Rifts as a pen and paper game because it is not the most elegant system, per se. It's certainly not the simplest system or the easiest to get into, but it is one of the most freeing and well-developed systems I have ever seen. It is a sandbox. It is truly a system where once you get in, and once you learn the system, you have more options to do whatever you want than I've ever seen. And I really, really adore that. Kevin's Simbita, I think. The creator of it, and everyone else at Palladium Books, they do an amazing job with world building. Yeah, so I love Rifts. The problem that I always had with Rifts is that it's got such a huge world. I mean, the Rifts Megaverse is vast. There's 30 some odd books that cover it. You've got Rifts Earth, and just on Rifts Earth, you've got Rifts Coalition area, the Lone Star State, the Vampire Kingdoms, the Magic Zone, the Wild West. You've got Japan, you've got Africa, you've got South America, you've got Europe. All of these places are completely fleshed out and very different from each other, with different threats, different cultures, different lifestyles. And that's just on Earth. Then you've got different realms. You've got the 3 galaxies, which is space, which we're doing a campaign in. You've got Wormwood, which is a whole other dimension. You've got tons of other dimensions. I mean, just the amount of settings in Rifts is mind-boggling. You've got the Palladium fantasy worlds. And the problem I always had with Rifts was it has such a huge area and places to explore, and you never really get to explore them. Most campaigns are kind of stuck in one location for the most part. If you start playing Vampire Hunters in Mexico, you generally spend your whole campaign playing Vampire Hunters in Mexico. If you start a campaign, you know, in the 3 galaxies, you spend most of your adventure in the 3 galaxies. So you never get to experience all the different places unless you do a whole bunch of different campaigns. And I thought about ways to do that, ways to experience, even in little bite-sized chunks, everything Rifts has to offer. So I did. I found a way, and that way is the Corsairs. So the Corsairs takes place several hundred years after the current Rifts setting. After where most people play Rifts, they play anywhere between 95 PA, which is post-apocalypse, and to like 110 PA. This Corsairs is set like 500 PA, a long time in the future. And basically, here's the premise. Traveling through Rifts is dangerous because you can use Rifts to travel through time and space, but it's unpredictable. Rifts are dangerous, so much so that only a few people were skilled enough to ever actually do it. Most people would get lost and wind up in some weird dimension they never intended to be in, or just never seen again, or they'd catch the attention of really bad things. So travel through space and time was limited. And scientists decided or realized that realized that through the galaxy there were natural occurring wormholes. But these wormholes were very unpredictable. You didn't know where it was going to shoot you out because it fluctuated. It was, well, there were a few wormholes that fluctuated, as in it would shoot you out different places each time. There were also many that were stable, but you couldn't choose where it went. It just connected 2 spots and that was it. And if those 2 spots happened to be where you wanted to go, groovy. Otherwise, it was useless to you. And artificial wormholes were very difficult because, and mixing a little bit of real science here, the scientists know that if you could generate enough gravity, like for example, if you could harness the gravity of a black hole, you could conceivably warp space and time enough to create a wormhole. However, that wormhole would need vast amounts of energy to maintain, and we don't know how to stabilize it enough to actually let matter travel through it. It falls apart. And they knew that to be the case. They could, say, utilize the gravity of a black hole to form a wormhole, but they couldn't find the energy to maintain it and make it big enough that and stable enough that people could actually use it, pass through it. And then they found what was called the Eye of Zebron. The Eye of Zebron was a massive black hole that right along the event horizon was a massive ley line nexus. And I know for some of you who don't know much about Rifts, you're not going to understand what I'm talking about. Ley lines are, think veins of magical energy. They are just giant blue glowing veins of raw, pure energy, magical energy. And when finding one ley line is rare, finding 2 that intersect, that's what we call a nexus. 2 or 3 that intersect, you call that a nexus. And the more that intersect, the greater the power of that nexus. And nexuses are rare to find, but they found a black hole where on the event horizon were dozens of ley lines that all converged into one massive nexus. And when viewed from the right angle, these ley lines set against the black, for lack of a better term, orb of the black hole, the event horizon, which you couldn't see past, the just pure blackness, it looked like a black eyeball with blue veins leading to a massively bright nexus pupil. And so it was named the Eye of Zeberon. And scientists realized that with this Eye of Zeberon, they could make a wormhole and use the ley lines to stabilize it. The ley line nexus, the massive amount of power generated by that massive ley line nexus, allowed them to build what was called a temporal gate. And this temporal gate would utilize the gravity from the black hole and the ley line nexus to form a stable wormhole to anywhere they wanted to go. Be that a different place in the universe, a different reality in the universe, or even a different time in the universe. It basically created nearly risk-free travel across space, time, and reality. I say nearly because it's still not exactly, there's still some dangers there. You are utilizing the gravity of a black hole, and it is right along the event horizon of the black hole. So basically, when you travel towards the temporal gate, you're going on a one-way trip. Your ship is traveling, basically caught in the gravity of the black hole, traveling towards the temporal gate. And it has to hit the temporal gate and travel through the wormhole to the next destination, or it will continue on into the black hole. Most ships do not have the ability to turn around and get up enough thrust to then again escape the gravity of the black hole. So it's kind of a one-way trip. You have to be really careful. When you come back the other way, like you're going through the temporal gate the other direction from wherever you came to the Eye of Zeberon, you enter the temporal gate at maximum thrust. You enter the wormhole at maximum thrust so that when you get out on the other side, you are already bang on full thrust and you've got just enough thrust to escape the event horizon. So it is still kind of dangerous, but with computer technology that they have, everything's automated, everything's safe, there's a whole bunch of safety protocols, it's not too dangerous. Hang on a second. Okay, sorry, I had to go do some shopping. I'm not quite sure where I left off. And I'm almost home anyway, so, oh, you know what, I'm gonna just keep going. I mean, I gotta put all of my groceries up and install the new power supply anyway. It's not like that takes my vocal capacity. So what the heck? Let's just keep going. What was I talking about? Temporal gates. So yeah, I was telling you guys the setting of the Corsair. So for the first time ever in the history of the Rifts Megaverse, and I should probably point out that most of this is stuff I'm writing. This isn't anything that's canon, so just be aware. I will say that I know that Kevin Simbita, when we talked, he really liked the idea of time travel, but we both agreed that it has to be handled carefully and that kind of thing. Anyway, where was I? Yes. So, for the first time in history, people could time travel, or travel to different realities, or what have you, and they could do it safely, because you couldn't normally do it through rifts. Well, at least you could. You just couldn't do it safely. And this was something that all the planets in the area thought needed to be monitored and carefully watched. So they have to come back for the new stuff. They decided to band together and make a joint organization to monitor the new temporal gate, because the chances for mischief were, obviously there. Hi, Logie. Did you miss me? No? You're just gonna walk away? You're gonna come back? Are you seeing if I have any treats? No treats for you this time, kitty. Here, come here, say hi. You want to say hi to the no? Okay, fine. He's just interested in the food. So, where was I? Oh yes, so the different races, including Earth, joined together and made an organization called the Commonwealth. Now this was 300 years, I think, before we start, you know, our story, more or less, before the campaign's going to start. So a good deal after when most people play Rifts, but still before where we are starting, they made an organization called the Commonwealth. And the Commonwealth was neutral. They weren't beholden to any one government. They were an amalgamation of all governments and became something on their own. And they built the city of Zeberon on an asteroid that orbited the black hole. They basically cut off the top half of the asteroid to get a flat surface to build on, and built a massive, massive city called Zeberon that orbits around the eye of Zeberon. Lots of synergy to be had, I'm sure. And the purpose of the Commonwealth was to regulate travel through the temporal gates and make sure that, as much as they could, it was being used properly. So they, for the first time in history, people were able to take pleasure cruises back to different places in time and to different realities. And they literally would have pleasure cruises. Oh, are you trying to scratch the couch, kitty? Well, you can't do that because you've got caps on your claws. Come here, come here, come here. Yeah, I know. Crazy cat. Where was I? Oh, yes. So they would take pleasure cruises to different places in history and different realities and go, ooh, look at this and ooh, look at that. And the Commonwealth regulated it as best they could. Like I said, they had a defense force, which was a lot like a regular military. For a time, everything was okay. And until things became not okay. Oh, I forgot to get Ziploc bags. I'm such a goober. I will have to, well, go get Ziploc bags at some point. Then something happened. And it's important to point out how time travel works in this universe, as far as I'm concerned. Again, not canon, just what I'm going with. You can't ever affect your present by changing your past. It works like this. Time likes to correct itself. It has a certain flow to it, a certain path that it likes to take. And it will try to correct that path if it can. For example, if you go back in time and shoot some random guy, we'll call him Joe. Joe will die. And it will have an effect on the timeline, but 9 times out of 10, not a big one, because most of the time, Joe would grow up, maybe get married, maybe not, maybe have kids, maybe not. And those kids might grow up, maybe not. But the overall, Joe himself is not going to have a huge impact on the universe or the region or even the nation that he is a part of. Most of the time, he will live and die and things will carry on much as they did. So if you take him out of the equation, some things change, sure, but time can correct for it. Almost as if it is an entity in and of itself, time can fix it. However, there are some people and some events, and the same is true for events, but there are some people and events that have massive impact on society and the culture around them. For example, I like to use this example a lot, but Christopher Columbus. If you were to kill Christopher Columbus before he found the Americas, time might have trouble recovering from that. It might be able to, because it's not like no one would have discovered the Americas, but someone who wasn't Spanish, of course Christopher Columbus was Italian, but that's beside the point. The Spanish wouldn't have been the first ones to, most likely, wouldn't have been the first ones to find the Americas. And if the Spanish weren't the first ones to find the Americas, then, well, lots of things could have and would have been different. America itself may never have existed. So time may not be able to correct that much. For example, or, you know, let's say, oh God, what's the famous one? If you went and, well, see, it's tricky. I was going to say if you went and shot Hitler, but see, that's the interesting thing. That's the tricky thing, is that taking Hitler out probably wouldn't have stopped World War II from happening. It just would have happened a bit differently. Germany was already chafing under the rules it had to live by after World War I. And sooner or later, this was probably going to erupt. Hitler was just the catalyst. And now, taking Hitler out may have changed the Überschmidt idea. Then a bunch of Jews may not have been killed in the Holocaust, and that actually time wouldn't have been able to correct for, because we're talking millions and millions of lives that would have had millions and millions of children and had millions of impacts on the world. That probably time couldn't account for. And in such cases, instead of changing the timeline you are from, let's say you go back and you kill Hitler, good for you. That's not going to change. When you go back to your timeline, when you travel back through the temporal gate, your timeline won't be changed at all. It will still be the same as it always was. World War II would have happened, Hitler would have done everything he did, etc., etc. Instead, what happens is, once you kill Hitler, the effect wouldn't be immediate. It would probably actually be once the decision was made not to destroy all the Jews, time would split. The timeline would split into two timelines, the original and a new alternate timeline. All right, Kitty. That's very graceful of you. Almost fell off the couch. Well done. It would have split into a new alternate timeline where all these events that occurred that you changed. And at first, this wasn't seen as such a bad thing. The Commonwealth would look at that. Sometimes criminals would like, a lot of criminals like to go back in time and alter things so that, like for example, go back to a time and use their now superior technology to carve out an empire for themselves. And the Commonwealth didn't like it, but they didn't put it on a high priority of things to do because it didn't affect the original timeline. It was this alternate fake timeline that didn't really touch the real one, so they're kind of like, we don't like it, but pfft, well, you know, whatever. And then incident, I forget what I called it. It's a number, incident 764, something like that. I'll have to look it up. And keep in mind, I'm going to, before we start the actual session, I'm going to have a much more organized video that talks about all this. Basically, the long and short story is a person from one of the new alternate timelines used a riff to travel to the original timeline and meet himself. So Bob from the new alternate timeline met Bob from the original timeline, and reality started to unravel. And to this day, no one's quite sure what happened, but the planet on which it took place is now completely lifeless and is still 300 years later, still barren and completely lifeless, killing billions. Reality literally unraveled and snapped back together, and we don't know exactly what happened, but it was bad. It was very, very bad. And the Commonwealth and the rest of the universe looked at this and said, huh, okay, all right, maybe this is a bit worse than we thought it was. Emergency meeting? Let's keep that from happening again. Yeah. So, yeah, sorry about that. So the societies got together, not just the Commonwealth, but everyone got together and said, ha, wow, hey, let's keep that from happening again. And they said, hey, Commonwealth, fix this. And they actually injected more cash and resources into the Commonwealth under the assumption that the Commonwealth was the best one to handle this problem. Hang on, give me a second. apparently my freezer bulb gets too cold to work sometimes. I don't know why or how that works exactly, but take it out for a bit, put it back in, and it works. Anyway, what was I saying? Stuff. Oh, yeah. So they said, hey, Commonwealth, here's money. Fix this. Don't ever let it happen again. And so the Commonwealth sit there and said, okay, how the fuck do we do that? Like, what are we supposed to do? How are we supposed to stop this from happening? We have no way of telling, you know, we can kind of monitor who goes through the gate, but once they're there, how are we supposed to determine who changed what timeline, when, where, and how to stop them? That's ridiculous. And almost as an answer to their question, the Avius showed up. The Avius, I don't know, I created the name and I'm not even sure how to pronounce it. The Avius were a mysterious alien race that showed up right around the same time, right after the incident occurred. And they made contact with the Commonwealth. Hang on. I gotta start preparing my computer to get work done. That's actually a good question. Someone actually, I remember now, someone asked if I had ever built a computer myself. And as a matter of fact, my current computer started off as a store-bought computer, but as of now, there is not a single piece of this computer in this case that I did not install myself. It's actually not that hard once you get the hang of it. Building a computer is not really hard to do. I've never built a computer all at once, per se. Like bought all the components and put the whole thing together. Most of it's been, you know, bit by bit, piece by piece. But, yeah. I could build a computer. In fact, I might have to if this thing is blown. Alright, let's take a look here. Hey, kitty. Coming to see me work. Oh, I'm going to have to remove a lot of stuff. Well, better get to it, huh? Huh? Yeah? Gotta remove this and that. So where was I? First, let me get my screwdriver. So the Avius came up, and they were a mysterious race that had some very interesting abilities. They could, in certain instances, see through time. They were able to connect with the timeline in some special ways that allowed them to they would interface with these machines. The Avius had this weird hybrid technology that was partly grown and partly built. So almost like cyborg plants, I guess would be a good way to describe it. And they would interface with these cyborg plants. And they were able to see through time and determine a couple of things. They could determine when a timeline split, who did it, and about where they were when it happened. Now, there's an important distinction to be made here. They can see when the timeline split. They can't see when that person traveled back to. As in, let's say someone traveled back to Chicago in 1950. Okay, but they didn't end up doing something that caused the timeline to split till 1975. That's what the Avius would pick up. They would have no idea what took place in between, or when it started, or when the person even went back in time. And that's an important distinction to make, because it means that the Commonwealth couldn't just go back to where whoever broke the timeline off also arrived and stop them right then. They had to, the only thing they could do is find out when the timeline split, which a lot of times meant their opponent was already entrenched and had a power base and was being much harder to dislodge. So, But they could see these things, and this was more than the Commonwealth had before. So the Commonwealth made a treaty with the Avius, who were very willing to help. The Avius were given a section of Zeberon to live in, which was deemed their section. No one was to interfere or go in there without permission. And the Avius would, in turn, work with the Commonwealth to try and stop this horrible event from ever happening again. A nice notion, if I say so myself. And gotta figure out how I'm supposed to remove this thong. Okay, there we go. Yes. So the Commonwealth started sending their military forces to try and apprehend and subdue these people. If they could apprehend and subdue them before they did whatever they did that split the timeline, the alternate timeline would disappear and everything would be hunky-dory. However, the kitty, no, go back, go away. However, this proved easier said than done. Mainly, well, not mainly, but for a variety of reasons. One very big one being that they were... Sorry, guys. I am having to take half my computer apart. The temporal gate led to an infinite number of realities and time periods and societies with an infinite number of variety and cultures. And the standardized military of the Commonwealth was ill-equipped to deal with many of the things they came across. They weren't adaptable enough. Whereas the criminals were very, very good at adapting to whatever society they traveled to. So the military of the Commonwealth kept getting outsmarted, outfought, and outmaneuvered by the criminals they were trying to hunt down because they didn't really understand the society they were working in. Basically, a standardized military is really powerful, and that's great, but it's not incredibly versatile. At least not in the sense we're talking about. Imagine one day you're in a Star Trek sci-fi type world, and the next day you're in the Wild West. And the next day you're in a culture that's highly advanced, but they don't allow guns of any kind. You see what I'm saying? They just weren't equipped to deal with the variety of places they went to. And the criminals, who had been there longer and had more time to adapt, were able to outwit them and outsmart them. And the capture rate was rather low. And the Commonwealth very quickly said, this isn't working. We need a new strategy. We need a new plan. And so they reorganized. They changed their military to be more of a police force, whose goal and purpose was to defend and keep the peace of Zeberon itself. And then they also formed the Corsairs. Now, the Corsairs were the best of the best. They found, after studying what worked and what didn't work, they realized that their military units who had the most success were their most talented and their brightest. The ones that could think outside the box, the ones that could adapt quickly to any given situation. They were the ones that were succeeding. And so they took these best and brightest and gave them highly specialized training that cultivated their individuality, their out-of-the-box thinking, their ability to adapt to any situation. And they took this core of elite people, called them the Corsairs, which the Corsairs most people know the Corsair is just another word for pirate, and yes, that is technically true, but there is another definition or meaning for Corsair. Corsair also means privateer or pirate hunter. The Corsair word was used to define both. And privateers were people that were given basically permission by governments to go pirating or to go track down pirates, either or. They were given permission to do both, depending on the circumstance. And they were given amazing freedom and autonomy, and were basically just told, we don't care how you do it, just do it. And so that term was given to the Corsairs, because the Corsairs were tasked with capturing these criminals. And not all of them were criminals. I mean, some of them just did it by accident. They didn't know they were making a new timeline. But in any case, they were all seen as criminals. They all had bounties on their heads. They were told, we don't care how you bring them back. Just bring them back. Just stop the timeline. And these Corsairs basically were divided up into small units that would work together. Oh, I gotta go get the power supply. Okay. And then given amazing autonomy in how they wanted to capture the people they were sent after. In addition, the Commonwealth adopted a bounty system. Instead of paying the Corsairs a salary, they started paying them bounties. They assigned bounties to the heads of wanted criminals, and this ensured that the most talented Corsairs got the most resources to keep doing what they're doing. It was a way of allocating resources where they needed to go, and motivating the Corsairs to do a good job. So, you see the echo? All of a sudden, I'm very echoey. Oh my gosh, echo, echo, echo. And then, I walk into here. Oh, where'd the echo go? It's still there a little bit, but not much. That's a little bit of soundproofing. So anyway, so the Corsairs were grouped up into units, usually of no more than 8. They were given a ship, a very special, highly advanced ship, another gift from the Avius, who basically made these ships that were part organic. The core components of the ship, the engine, the hull, the systems, the life support, all that was organic and almost alive. The ship was then covered with a special alloy plating, and weapons were added to it, and faster than light thrusters were added to it, and a couple other things to make it a ship. But the core of the ship was actually organic, so it was a fusion of organic and inorganic material, and it was highly advanced. It was an amazing ship. Not only did it fly faster and hit harder than most ships of its size, but it could repair its core systems on its own organically. It took time, but it could heal, basically. And Corsairs were given a ship, and the ships themselves are not sentient. At least the Corsairs say there's nothing to indicate that they are sentient. The Commonwealth does. But many, many, many veteran Corsairs will tell you that they don't care what the Commonwealth says. They think their ship takes care of them. They think the ship maybe sings to them in their sleep, or gets them out of tight spots. Basically, a lot of Corsairs, whether it's alive or not, no one really knows, but a lot of Corsairs believe that it is sentient, that it knows, and it takes care of them. The Avius, of course, just politely smile and never really answer. Some people theorize that that's because the ships are alive. Others theorize because that the Avias think that if the Corsairs think the ship is alive, they'll take better care of it, and they just don't want to destroy that illusion. Whatever is the real case, we don't know. The Avias are very secretive. So, the Avias had one last gift to give Corsairs, and that gift was... Hang on a second. I gotta figure out exactly how I'm gonna do this. Alright. Sorry guys, I gotta figure out... I gotta be very careful to place everything where it goes. Oh boy. A boy. So the Avias gave the Corsairs one final gift. Whenever a candidate becomes a full-fledged Corsair, the Avias implant something into them. They do something to them. We don't know exactly what. It's, as far as we can tell, mystical, magical. But it gives the Corsairs the ability to see two things. They can see people who are from an alternate timeline. These people are wreathed in a blue aura. It doesn't completely cover the person, it's more like an outline. And this blue aura indicates that this person is from an alternate timeline. They don't belong in this timeline, which is a very useful thing for a Corsair to know. And the other ability it gives them is they can see people who will have a major effect on the timeline. Now, they don't know what this means, what they'll do, or anything like that. They just know that they will have some major effect on the timeline, whatever that may be. This also is incredibly useful for a Corsair to know, because if a Corsair is continuously traveling back in time, it would be nice to know who they should not touch or harm in any way, because if they do, they might split off a new timeline. It's also useful because sometimes, maybe, it will let them know who the target of the bad guys are. Not all the time. See, it's a tricky thing. Now, some of the others I've talked to, they don't like this as much. Or they think that they don't like the mystical part of it. They think maybe we could do it less mystically, like just say that the Corsairs have a database on important people in history, and those are the people that you aren't supposed to touch and all that. But I don't like that as much because it gives you too much information. I like the idea of just knowing that this person at some point in some time is important. You don't know how, you don't know why, and you don't know what will stop it. So you have no clue what's going to happen. Let me give you a scenario. Let's say you see a person wreathed in red aura. You know they're important. They will be important at some point. And they are trying to kill a child. Well, poop, what do? Do you let them kill the child? Obviously, the correct answer, or the first response would be, no, don't let him kill the child. But what if he needed to? What if killing that child is what gave him that important effect on the timeline? You don't know. If we go with, well, we have a database of who's important, then we would know what they did that made the timeline, that made them so important to the timeline. Without knowing that, it adds an element of morality to it of, do I just stand by and let this happen? Or do I help the kid and take the chance that, because if you think about it, he's trying to murder a kid. Is that really going to have a huge effect on the timeline? If it's just a normal kid, probably not. You're probably safe saving that kid's life. Just don't kill the person. But maybe you're not. Maybe you are. Maybe you're not. And I love that sense of, I don't know. So I like keeping it kind of more mystical. But anyway. So yes, they can see people who don't belong in that timeline, who are from an alternate timeline. And it should be pointed out that not all people who are from an alternate timeline are to be hunted down or anything like that. There are even some allowed to stay in the original timeline, but only if it has been confirmed that their original self from the original timeline has been killed. is no longer alive, is dead. Not, maybe they die from natural causes, maybe they die from any reason, but it doesn't matter. If their original self is dead, then there's no chance they'll run into their original self and cause problems with reality. Of course, I assume also that would mean that the body would also have to be disposed of, cremated or whatever. So just because you see someone with a blue aura doesn't necessarily mean, oh my God, we gotta like hunt them down or something. No. It's more of a, if you see someone with a blue aura, make sure they're supposed to be there, kind of thing. So yeah. Oh yeah. So anyway, like I was saying, the Corsairs, the success rate went through the roof. The Corsairs were amazingly effective. They were smarter and more versatile and able to adapt even better than the criminals they went after. And they started having amazing results. And the Corsairs started developing a reputation. Though not the one you might think at first. It was a reputation of infamy more than anything else. Why? Because the Commonwealth's first stance on it was, get the job done, we don't care how you do it. And that's not a very good stance to have. Corsairs would get the job done, and damn the consequences. I mean, a lot of them would. Some of them had morals and stuff, but others didn't care. If I stepped on a bunch of toes to stop this criminal, who cares? I stopped the criminal. And that started getting the Commonwealth a lot of flack, because they would go to different times and places. And imagine this. Let's say you're a law enforcement in present day. Let's just say you're a police officer. Maybe you are. And all of a sudden, someone else come from the future or from wherever butts in, says, this person who's been living in your neighborhood for 10 years and has never caused a problem whatsoever to you is a criminal, and we're taking them. And we don't care what you have to say about it. We don't care if you think they're innocent or not. We know they're not, and we are taking them with us. You probably would not like those people very much, and probably have issues with their methods. Or what happens if you're a Corsair, or they're a Corsair, and they're trying to stop a criminal, and they stop the criminal, but in so doing, they blow up a building that had some innocents in it. Well, they stopped the criminal, and thus possibly a much greater catastrophe, but they also blew up a building with innocents in it. That's not going to win them any favors. So the Commonwealth actually started receiving a lot of flack from different societies. And keep in mind too, Corsairs didn't just hunt down people in the past. They hunted down all kinds of people. They were bounty hunters. They hunted down criminals of the Commonwealth, whether that be in the past, present, not the future. Important to note, you cannot go to the future. The temporal gate is the one limit. You can't go to the future. Don't know what's going to happen. The leading theory is that time is like a rug that's being woven, and the present is when the weaving's taking place. And the future hasn't been woven yet, so it's impossible to go there. That's the current theory, of course. Now, you could say, but if you travel at the speed of light, won't you go in the future? Technically, yes and no. You still experience time, you just experience it much faster than everyone else. So you don't jump to the future. You travel there like everyone else does, you just do it much quicker. So, yes and no, to answer that question. Also, keep in mind, the goal here is to try and answer as many questions as we can, but we're not going to answer every question. This is time travel, and time travel's wonky stuff, and you could probably come up with 100 different what-if scenarios, and in the end, this is a mechanic for a cool adventure, and that must be remembered at all times. Okay, it looks like I'm going to have to do this bottom one first. So anyway, the Commonwealth started getting a really bad rep. People started hating the Commonwealth, and the Corsairs especially. And the Commonwealth had to do some amazing gymnastics, diplomatic gymnastics to keep all-out war sometimes from breaking out. They were really good at it. The politicians of the Commonwealth were amazing at consoling, strong-arming, or just cutting deals with other societies to keep themselves out of war and out of trouble. But they realized that this was a stopgap and that they needed to change the way they do things. So they developed the core tenets for the Corsairs to follow. There are 4 core tenets for every Corsair, and every Corsair is supposed to hold sacred and dear. And the 4 Corsair tenets are thus: do not cause the death either by action or inaction of an innocent being anyone who is not directly involved with aiding or abetting or colluding with your target. Yeah, and also if anyone's trying to cause you harm, they're not considered an innocent. You're okay to subdue them with appropriate force. Rule number 2. So in other words, don't blow up a building just to capture your target. Don't do it. Just don't do it. Rule number 2 is, hang on, sorry. Don't do everything within your power to follow the laws and customs of whatever environment you are in. I.e., if you're in an environment that doesn't allow shoes, don't wear shoes. The only exception to this rule is if the laws or customs of the environment makes it impossible to capture your target, i.e., let's say, hang on a second, I'm trying to connect this thing, having some difficulty. Let's say your target, let's say your society has like a church type thing, and no one is allowed to enter this church. No outsiders are allowed to enter this church or do anything in this church, and your target has run into the church. Somehow he's convinced the people that he's not an outsider. Maybe he's become part of their tribe, whatever the case may be. But you're not allowed in this church, and he knows it, and he's hiding in there. You are to do everything within your power to capture him while obeying these customs. But if it is absolutely impossible, you just cannot get this guy, if you obey this custom, you have permission to break the custom as long as you do so covertly. And if you don't do so covertly, you are going to be held accountable. So the Corsairs kind of say, look, if you absolutely have to, break their laws, but make damn sure they don't see you do it. But only if you absolutely have to. Tenet number 3, do not use weapons or magic or psionic abilities if they are restricted in an area, i.e., in the world of rifts, you have giant laser guns and giant magic spells and things like that. And if you travel to, say, the Wild West, where such things didn't really exist yet, you are restricted from using them. Why? Because if you travel to the Wild West and start busting out with energy rifles or magical spells, you might alter the timeline by either freaking people out so that they think this stuff is real, or perhaps someone sees it, gets inspired by it, and figures out how to do it on their own way before they should have, or, you know, there's a plethora of problems that creates. So, and from a mechanic standpoint, what kind of fun is it if you're in the Wild West and shooting everyone with laser bolts? So, rule number 3 for the core tenets for the Corsairs. Every bounty has restrictions on it. Follow those restrictions to the letter. If that is not possible, like for example, an important thing to note, criminals don't follow these rules. So let's continue with my Wild West idea. Let's say you're tracking someone who went back to the Wild West. You're not supposed to use robots and lasers, but nothing's telling them they can't. So they might. So if you come across such a thing where they're trying to kill you with robots and lasers, you are allowed to respond with appropriate force, because otherwise you're going to die. I mean, you don't have a choice at that point. You need to, you're not going to hurt that thing with a 6-shooter, unless you're like a psionic gunslinger or something. So you're allowed to use your weapons. However, sorry guys, focusing between two things, making sure I'm doing everything correctly. However, there are there's certain ways to do this. So normally what happens is all your mega damage, and this is what's called in Rifts if you don't know, all your mega damage gear and equipment is collapsible and locked in your on your belt. Basically, in the future, weapons didn't get much more powerful than they already were in the Rifts Megaverse. I mean, they're still comparatively the same power. They're still pretty good, but not by much. Because let's face it, a laser can only do so much damage. Material can only block so much damage. There's limits to how far you can go and what you can do. So how things did develop, though, was the speed at which you could don them, how collapsible and portable they were. In regular Rifts, it can take several minutes to throw on body armor. In the Corsair's world, it takes a few seconds. You basically, it collapses into a little box behind your neck. You activate it, and it encloses around you. Think like almost like Iron Man, like the Iron Man movies. Your weapons collapse into little boxes that you can hold on your belt, and when you activate them, they unfold basically into your weapons. Now, the reason for this is twofold. One, it's cool. Two, while I understand that in the world of Rifts, the fact that it takes time to put on mega damage equipment is a really cool thing, because it makes you always think. Before you travel outside, you want to make sure you've got the right equipment on, because it could take time. However, the Corsairs constantly have to go to areas where this stuff is restricted. They're not allowed to use it. And they are constantly having to face people who don't care. So the idea that they might be in a restricted area and have to face someone who've basically, again, let's go with the Wild West idea. They're in a tavern in 1845, and someone busts in with power armor and starts shooting at them. Well, if I keep the normal rules of it takes several minutes to don your power armor and you gotta lug it around with you and all that jazz, I, as a GM, am faced with a serious dilemma. Because while this might be fun to do once in a while, you know, it provides an interesting, unique challenge for the players. Holy crap, we're fighting something much bigger than us. How do we delay him while we get our equipment on? It's cool to do maybe once in a while, but it's just cruel to do on a regular basis. And in the Corsair type setting, you could be doing this on a regular basis easily. So either, as a GM, you either have to give them full warning of what could happen to give them time to equip their stuff, or give them a way of equipping their stuff incredibly quickly, which gives you much more versatility when it comes to surprising them. So that's what I did. Plus, it's just cool. I mean, come on, how cool is it to press a button and just get encased in body armor? So anyway, yes, so let's say this instance I just talked about happened. The Corsairs have a couple options. First and foremost, they're supposed to call into Corsair Command, if possible, and get clearance. Hey, big giant robots attacking. I need to use my stuff. And Corsair Command will say yay or nay. They will give authorization. And you might be saying, well, how do they contact Corsair Commander in the past? I will get to that in a second. If they don't have time to do that, or they can't get a hold of Corsair Command for several reasons, any number of reasons, honestly, they are allowed to just defend themselves. They're allowed to activate their equipment and do what they need to do to survive and protect the innocents around them. Because there is a stopgap measure. Hang on, there we go. Let's get this baby pressed down. I'm reattaching my cooling unit, which is a beast. All right. Yeah. There is something in every Corsair called a REC. R-E-C. Reactive... hang on. Something camera. I forget. Reactive something camera. I just remember the anagram. I made the damn anagram and I can't remember what it is. Reactive emergency camera? I don't know. But it's called a REC. And what it does is anytime you use restricted equipment, like mega damage equipment, in a restricted zone, or restricted, or any kind of psionics or magic in a restricted environment. Holy cow, this is really hard to get to. The REC starts recording. It's installed in every Corsair's eye, and it's recorded in little nanobots that are in their body. And it basically starts recording, oh, reactive eye camera. Reactive eye camera is what it's called because it's installed in their eye. Duh. It starts recording whatever the Corsair sees. And the point of this is if you get stuck in a situation where you must use restricted equipment, the camera will start recording, and you can use it to show that you needed to do what you did, i.e. your camera starts recording the giant power armor in the middle of the Midwest, or Old West, Wild West saloon trying to kill you. And then back at home, the Commonwealth can be like, oh, yeah, okay, I see that. It also works the other way. It'll also show if you didn't have reason to use it. So a Corsair better be careful. Because they will go to a tribunal after each mission, which I will describe in a second. So this reactive eye camera is installed to every Corsair, bar none. It's recorded in nanobots in their blood. Just in case they get any funny ideas. There's lots of Corsairs who have, over the years, tried to beat the system. It's possible. But it's difficult. So, those are the options. They try and call into Corsair Command to get clearance. If they can't do that, even if they do that, they just activate their equipment. The REC will automatically start recording, and they take appropriate action. So, the final tenet of the Corsairs is a simple one. Always obey Corsair Command. Period. End of story. That's the fourth tenet. Corsair Command, see, the Corsairs themselves have an amazing amount of autonomy. They're basically trained, given a pedigree of you guys are good to go, and from that point on, they're allowed to choose whatever bounties they want. They're allowed to pursue those bounties pretty much in any way they want, as long as they follow the tenets. Because they found that the more freedom they give the Corsairs, the higher their success rate is. They don't really have much of a chain of command. One Corsair unit is not answerable to another Corsair unit, period. Period. There's no veteran Corsair unit that can tell a novice Corsair unit what to do or anything like that. I mean, other than just they're veterans and we should probably listen to them. I mean, obviously there's that, but no official chain of command other than Corsair Command itself. Now, Corsair Command is made up of veteran Corsairs who have been handpicked to be part of Corsair Command, and they're kind of the brains behind the Corsairs. They don't tell the Corsairs what to do, They just kind of make sure they're doing what they're supposed to and offer guidance and support and that kind of thing. And once in a while, they'll give orders. And a lot of times, they'll actually give other missions, too. Corsair Command will many times say, we need you to do this, protect, bodyguard this person, or go on this mission, or whatever. So that's the fourth rule. Don't disobey Corsair Command. Now, it's important to know from a mechanical standpoint, these are the game's rules, not my rules as a GM, or the rules of any GM, because this module, this campaign system, is going to be made available to anyone. We're not quite sure what form it's going to take yet. It might be a website, it might just be something I release. But the idea is so that if you like this system, you can take it, you'll have everything you need to play it yourself. I don't want to go too much into it because honestly, like I said, I don't know what form it's going to take. But yes, so it's important to note as a GM that these are not the GM's rules. These are the game's rules. And the reason why I make that distinction is because if you are a GM and your players try to break the tenets, it should not be automatic failure. It should be difficult, but if they put time and effort into it and they come up with a feasible way to do it, you should reward them for it. See, player choice is really important. And as a GM, it's important to remember that. And it's hard too sometimes. It really is. So, yeah. All right. I think I got everything back installed in place. We're coming up on the moment of truth here, folks. So the Corsairs. The success rate of the Corsairs went down a bit once they started following the tenets, because they were now bound by rules. So their success rates were not as high. However, their reputation improved immensely. People stopped hating Corsairs and started greatly respecting them. So much so that many societies that know of the Corsairs, who know who they are, will help them out. Basically, a lot of societies have gotten to the point where they trust the Corsairs so much that if a Corsair is in the area and they say this guy is a criminal, most societies, if they know who the Corsairs are willing to help them in any way they can. Give them access to the crime scene, give them any help or resources they need. Because, and this has taken a long time, but the Corsairs have finally garnered an ounce of respect. Not just an ounce, but an enormous amount. And this took a couple hundred years. I mean, this was not quick or fast or easy or anything like that. It took a lot of time. And, yeah. Which is another cool tool as a GM. If your players are stuck, or if your players are nice and they respect the rules of the culture that they're in, if they're not in the past, see, normally in the past, no one's going to know who the Corsairs are. But if they're in the present or a different reality or something that's heard of the Corsairs, have the local law enforcement play ball. If your Corsair team is flippant, arrogant, and disregards the culture, well, then don't have the local law enforcement play ball. All right. To wrap it up, because I'm almost done, moment of truth here. The Corsairs, the campaign that we're going to be playing is set in that timeline. The players are going to be choosing bounties. I've devised about 20 some odd bounties, which Rachel, who is a sometimes guest star on our Rifts campaign, has drawn for me, and they are amazing. They will basically choose bounties and go after them. The bounties work quite simply. Each bounty has a certain number attached to it for monies. Since the Commonwealth prefers to punish instead of kill, if they capture the bounty alive and relatively unharmed, and relatively unharmed means no permanent damage either mentally or physically to them, You can't paralyze them. You can't make them into a vegetable, that kind of thing. You can break a bone as long as it'll heal. They'll get an extra 50% onto that bounty. So let's say the bounty's 1 million credits. They bring them home alive, that's 1.5 million. At the end of each bounty, every Corsair goes through a tribunal. A tribunal is a chance to reflect upon their actions during the mission. The Commonwealth politicians, the head politicians in the city, will all come together, and they will review the actions of the Corsairs during the mission. And if the tribunal determines, there's 3 people in the tribunal. If all 3 of them agree that the Corsairs upheld the tenets and acted in the capacity a Corsair should, if all 3 of them agreed, an extra 25% is added to the bounty. So it'd be 1.75 million if they brought the character back alive as well. So lots of incentive to play right. The interesting thing about tribunals is, let's say the Corsairs did some questionable things, some questionable actions. This is a chance as a GM to have them face the music, and as a player to defend themselves, which is really cool. I like the idea a lot. So, all right. I think we're at a moment of truth time here. Let's see what happens. Okay. Computer turned on. All right. Let's go to the monitors. Hi, Gaba. Did it fry my system? See, it could have still fried my motherboard. The simple fact that the computer turns on doesn't really mean much. What's going on? Nothing's going on right now. That's not good. Could also be that I didn't install something properly. I think I did. Oh, that's not good. Let's make sure that all my cables are attached properly. Am I missing something? Is there something that needs to be attached that's not? Alright, let's see here. Let's see here. You're attached, you're attached, you're attached. You're both attached. Okay. Everything's good. Come on, computer, don't let me down. Please? Please don't let me down. Well, poop. Alright, well, guys, I'm going to go ahead and end this here. I got to figure out what's wrong with my computer. Obviously, it's not just my power supply. It might have burnt out my whole motherboard or everything, for all I know. So, that'll be fun. Which means I'm not sure when you guys are going to get this. But we'll get up to you as soon as I can. Alright, guys. Take care. See you later. Ta-ta.